got a student struggling with role playing, and what I mean by that is not Dungeons and Dragons, but I mean playing a role and identifying their role and their partner's role and their partnership dynamic in the context of debate. Because the debate format that I've always considered home base and sort of my main expertise is parliamentary debate, which is a two-on-two format. But if you're in public forum, you have a partner. If you're in policy, you have a partner. And so it's important to be able to understand this concept. So when I say role playing, what is role playing? When I say role playing, I mean being able to play your role. And that obviously means being able to, in the first place, know what your role is, know what the roles are, and then being able to decide what role fits you or what role needs to be filled in the context of your partnership and in the context of your team. And then making sure that is your focus. And what I mean by that is if you how do I guess the best way to phrase this is this. I think that the ideal debate partnership is two people who are superstars and who don't need a ton of resources to be effective. But the reality is that's like no one. That's like Brenna and Tristan in as far as college parlay, they might literally be the only people that I think have that going on right now. They're both like very exceptionally good debaters, obviously national champions, and they both can do it on their own, right? Effectively. Like they both can debate with other people and be effective, and they can do whatever kind of speech they need to do and things of that nature. But you're not them, almost certainly. Actually, you probably are them because Brenna and Tristan are fucking the homies and they support Proteus. So they're probably watching this, even though I have like nothing left to teach them. So they're cool. Anyway, getting back into this. Let's first talk about how do you do it. The first thing we have to discuss is this idea of modeling debate. You have to ask yourself, what is your model of debate? What do you think is happening in the context of partner dynamics and things like that in a debate? I've told this story before, but when I wanted to be Dallas's debate partner, Dallas was my debate partner in college, and Dallas was an exceptional debater, much better than me. Um, when I wanted to be Dallas's debate partner, I pretty much pitched her on it, and what I kind of explained to her in PowerPoint format over Discord call, I think, or maybe Skype at that time, who knows. But what I talked to her about was that, from my perspective, Dallas was this superstar carry and could, be a national champion or something like that. She's had a ton of talent, a ton of skill, a ton of knowledge. She was just very, very good. And what I thought was going to be a problem, depending on who she debated with, was that her partner might think that too, but about themselves. They might think that no, they're the really good debater or they're the carrier or whatever. And like I said, in an ideal world where both people are super sick and don't have egos and can do all these things and get along or whatever, that works just fine. But in the vast majority of cases, that's not how things work. There is the language you use in debate, which is ridiculous, is like a carry and a backpack. But there is someone who is the better debater. There is someone who is there is someone for whom you should be designing your strategy and your approach around, and there is someone whose job is to facilitate that. And I think that we can see this in all kinds of competitive disciplines. Definitely in basketball, like teams that are all stars are rarely successful because you need someone who's willing to give up and someone who's willing to facilitate. We definitely see this in games like League of Legends, where there's literally a support role and the jungle role, which both essentially are, for the most part, giving up their resources so someone else can carry on a more effective champion or who's just more skilled or whatever. Counter Strike similarly has this thing, right? There's these people who are entry fraggers, so the first people into the site, and as a result, they're probably going to die almost every round, but that means that the second person into the site is more effectively set up. Or there's the people who are more supportive and who are dropping good guns even though they had the money to buy one themselves and giving it to that better player because that is most likely to produce the desired outcome, which is winning the debate. So, when I say modeling debate, I think that this same thing plays out in debate for the vast majority of people. I think someone needs to accept that they are not as good as the other person currently. Again, your levels are fixed, or rather, are not fixed. You could improve, they could slack off, whatever. Many things could happen. But the bottom line is, most likely, what you need is someone who is carrying, who's getting all the positions they want, who's getting to read what they want, who you're building the strategy around, and then someone who is sacrificing to facilitate that, right? Now, obviously, you're not trying to be a liability. It's not like, oh, well, you're just really bad, so you're the support. That's not the same thing, right? There's a mindset and there's an approach to being a supportive debater and a supportive partner, and it includes like literal support, like being the rock for your team or whatever, and maybe you bring snacks or something. But then there's how are you setting up this strategy? Are you making it so? I'll give you one example. In parliamentary debate, the MG is a fairly uh, time pressured speech, right? Because in many cases, it's the fastest speech in the debate because they have to respond to the LOC and still talk about the affirmative. Whereas the PMC is like a walk in the park. Like, there's nothing stopping you from giving a 5-minute PMC and still winning the national championship because, like, you only need so much to win. Technically, you could win any debate by just reading an AFK and then stopping whenever the AFK is done, or by reading any plan and one advantage and still winning the debate, regardless effectively of how long it is, as long as you're very good. So, if you're the PMC, one way you can be supportive is to make sure you are doing things in the PMC that set up your MG, right? So, for instance, if your MG is going to struggle with answering the K or something, or answering theory or whatever, you can just read a bunch of preamps in the PMC where you didn't really need that time for anything, and now you've saved them time. And on top of that, like, you obviously want to make sure that the things you're reading are the things your partner wants you to be reading. This was a conversation me and Dallas had, right? Because there were certain preamps that I wanted to read in the PMC, but Dallas is like, those aren't the things I like to go for. Read these preamps instead because that's what I want to go for. That's what I feel comfortable going for. And so that's what I started doing, right? But the bottom line is, if you are the support, then you need to be putting the other person in position. Like, even if you don't like debating about Russia or North Korea or whatever, like, if that's what your partner needs you to do for you to win, that's what you should do. Um, Conversely, obviously, if you're the carry, then you need to be making sure you are asking for these resources and effectively communicating those things. And, like, you don't have to be mean about it, but, like, at a certain point, it's important to just be like, look, like, I'm gonna say this way meaner than you should. I am better than you, and I understand how to win. And doing things the way I want to and facilitating me is the best way for us to win, the most likely way for us to win. So if that is what you're interested in, my hair looks crazy right now. I apologize. Then that's what we're going to do. You're just going to listen to what I say and we're going to win. And that's how we get it, right? It's fine. There's, if at a certain point you have to decide, like, do you care more about winning or do you care more about being the person who carries? This is a phenomenon that happens in League of Legends. That's like a huge problem where there's a lot of people who play carry positions like mid lane or bottom, which used to be called AD carry. And if they're doing bad, they just want to give up. They don't care. Even if the rest of their team's crushing it, they want to give up because they don't care about winning. They only want to win on their own terms. They want to win with them being the person who carries for various egotistical reasons or whatever. Can't have that happen. So the first thing you have to do is establish how do you personally model debate, and then we get to step 2, which is kind of analyzing how you and your partner will fill that mold. You have to just be completely honest with yourself. If you're incapable of admitting that your debate partner is better than you, if they're better than you, that's whack. Like, there's nothing wrong with you not being as good as them. And especially, I think I've mentioned this in a video literally 3-4 years ago, but, like, being the best debater inherently means every partner you have is worse than you, unless, again, you're one of those rare people like Brennan and Tristan, where, like, both of you are just, like, the top 2 debaters in the country, or at a minimum, both of you are in the top 5, right? There's significant parity there. And so you need to be completely honest about who you are in the relationship and which role you think you can fill. And this can be a conversation. Like, you can disagree that you should be the supporter, you should be the carry. But if there's a significant disagreement, that means, honestly, you probably shouldn't be partners. Or you need a different model, because how is it going to work out if you're just not on the same page? So that brings us to partner dynamics. I think this is a really important thing to understand, and it's going to lead into the DISA point of seeing other people. But when I say partner dynamics, what I mean is there are certain teams where even if they have the model right, or even if they're in that lucky case where they're both very good debaters, they just don't work well together for various reasons, right? This could be communication breakdowns. This could be differences in philosophy in terms of how you want to approach the debate more broadly. This could be personality clashes and things of that nature. But you got to get that shit ironed out, right? Like you have to know who's responsible for what and how your relationship functions. At Pacific, we had to write an affirmative and a negative file every week on a topic that we were assigned by our coaches. And there was a period where I wrote both files because Dallas had a lot of stuff going on because she was in a real major, like math. That was fine because whatever, I needed to learn how to write files anyway because I was going to be a coach. And I cared about us winning. And if this is what was going to make Dallas less stressed, then why wouldn't we do that? Like, whatever. Um, I accepted that, right? It was more work for me, but I wanted to win, and so that's what had to happen. And there were times me and Dallas could both be. I took a personality test once, a standardized personality test, and the results said that as far as agreeableness, I was in the 99th percentile of being disagreeable, which means if there's a room of 100 people, I'm more disagreeable than 99 of them. Which means that certainly I can be very opinionated and I'm more than willing to get into shouting matches with people or whatever. But that wasn't really happening with me and Dallas. Like we maybe yelled at each other 2 or 3 times in the years that we debated, but it was mostly like Dallas being mad at me for legitimate reasons or sometimes illegitimate reasons, and then me being like, okay, like trying to take that on the chin and move forward with it because that's what we needed in our dynamic. And it wasn't like she was being vindictive or mean, but like she just needed to express these things, or I wasn't living up to my part of the deal, right, and kind of fulfilling my role. And since she was better, I didn't even know. There were times where I didn't even know I was doing something wrong, and she was correcting me, right? And in some big rounds we won. When we run mile high, like that was pretty much just Dallas hard carrying. Like I said what we should go for, but Dallas kind of had to walk me through and hold my hand doing it because I was like, I ran out of stuff to say after like 4 or 5 minutes, and she's like, "Paul, if you want," I think she literally says in the recording for the trial, "If we want to actually win on this, Paul, you need to say these things." And it's like on a microphone, so it's really awkward. But bottom line is, you kind of have to figure out how you and your partner work, and if it's not working, you need to evaluate whether you can continue to work together. Which brings us to the D sub point, which is seeing other people. Um, my senior year, I debated with Dominic at a tournament. I debated with a woman named Kendall, who was a potential person joining the team at a tournament. And junior year, I think might have been senior year. I'm not entirely sure on this. Dallas got sick at our round robin tournament, and after I think the first round, the second round, she left, and so I debated with Melissa. And my broader point being that sometimes you need to debate with other people because it forces you to fulfill the other role, right? And this doesn't mean you can't be partners again or whatever. And this doesn't mean it's just a one tournament thing. Maybe you debate with someone else for the whole semester or whatever. But sometimes you need to debate with other people because it gives you insights, not necessarily because they're better or they know more things, but when I debated with Dom, even though Dom ended up being very good someday, I kind of had to be the carry at that tournament. And when I debated with Kendall, I was definitely the carry. And with Melissa, it was much more even, right? And we had a very different relationship than me and Dallas did, even though we were kind of homies still. But my broader point being that debating with those people made me sort of realize in some ways, like, oh, I have it so good with Dallas, or like, now I understand why this thing I do upsets Dallas because like if you're the carrier, you're just like, dude, you have to do this. How are you not doing this? And like, how are you not seeing this? And so I think that sometimes the best thing for your partnership is not debating with that person for a while because the outcome of this can be a you realize how good you had it, or you realize something about their role that you're now fulfilling that makes you better, right? Because if you know what the carry needs and you're the support, then you can better set them up. And if you're the carry and now all of a sudden you're the support, which in Dom's case was sort of a thing, you start learning how you facilitate and help the other person, right? The other option is that you realize that you just shouldn't be debate partners, right? Because you have more fun with the other person and you work better with the other person or whatever it might be. And that's totally fine, right? Because as long as you're both ending up in a place where you're reasonably happy, that's cool. And then the other thing is sometimes like just having time away from someone changes something about the dynamic or changes something about you and is just what you needed. The Dallas thing where I debated with Dom at Mile High, basically, Dallas is going through some stuff. And so we didn't debate from, I think, November until like February, I think we didn't debate, and then in February we had like a horrible, like the biggest like shouting match we ever had kind of situation at the one tournament we went to before we went to nationals, and we were semifinalists, right? And we did just fine, and we got along really great. But that time apart kind of helped us with some stuff, and so I think that that is definitely an option as far as figuring out the role playing stuff. So again, that's a 15-minute answer to a question one of my students asked, and Proteus, we're still the best. Except for I can't click stop recording.